mean, it wouldn't have mattered because it all changes anyway. And we're both kind of fierce when we work.
Yeah.
And so,
why?
if I come...
I stayed silent for 40 years to protect the role. Today, I speak out to protect myself. Michelle is no longer just a symbol on the screen. She is a survivor of backstabbing by 5 men you once thought were heroes. One called her expired. One drove her into depression. And one, still strutting down the red carpet, because for 40 years, she chose silence over exposing him. Who among them made Michelle want to walk away from it all? Who made her once hate herself? If you think you know everything about Michelle Pfeiffer, you're wrong. Like, comment, and subscribe now. Because today's truth will show you why so many stars stay silent, but she chose not to.
And I had sworn off of them, and my best friend said, please, just this last time, meet this guy, David Kelly.
Michelle Marie Pfeiffer was born on April 29, 1958, in Santa Ana, California. From a supermarket cashier to a Hollywood star, she entered the industry like a cold breeze, quiet, unflashy, yet sharp enough to make the world turn its head. Her career is proof of a bitter paradox, celebrated, yet controlled. She once captivated millions with unforgettable performances. In Scarface, 1983, she played Elvira Hancock, cold, alluring, and trapped in a world of violence and male desire. In The Witches of Eastwick, 1987, Michelle stood alongside legends, though behind her sparkling eyes was the feeling she was slowly vanishing from her own story. Dangerous Liaisons, 1988, cast her as a heartbreakingly broken soul, earning her an Oscar nomination and a prestigious BAFTA win. In The Fabulous Baker Boys, 1989, she sang, hurt, and seduced, a role that crowned her as a true movie star. And when she donned the leather suit in Batman Returns, 1992, she was no longer just an actress. She was an icon, mesmerizing, wounded, and irreplaceable. Each role was a step up the ladder of fame. But for Michelle, every step came at the cost of silence, pressure, and untold truths, until now. Michelle Pfeiffer isn't just a lucky actress. She embodies an era where women had to overcome the male gaze just to be seen on screen, and overcome their own fears just to stay after the cameras stopped rolling. She never shouted for attention. She performed, and made the world go quiet. And then, the accolades followed: 3 Oscar nominations, for roles never repeated, 1 BAFTA win, along with numerous International Critics Awards, 8 Golden Globe nominations, 1 win. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, her name carved in stone, after decades etched in the minds of audiences. And in 2025, she left her handprints at TCL Chinese Theater, the highest honor Hollywood bestows on a true legend. But some things aren't found in statistics. No one counted how many times she was rejected for being not obedient enough. No one handed out trophies for the days she filmed in pain, both physical and emotional. And no one praised her for staying true to herself, in a world determined to distort her. The numbers may fill a resume. But pain and perseverance, they're what write the legend named Michelle Pfeiffer. And the first name on that list was the man who once held her hand at the altar, but also the first to make her shrink herself so his love wouldn't feel threatened. Don't call it love. It was ego dressed in tenderness. Peter Horton, the first man Michelle called her husband, was also the first to suffocate her ambition with a false gentleness and a calculated silence, silence meant to suppress. There was a time they held each other in a tiny kitchen, baking bread and laughing over roles no one remembered. When Michelle was still taking supporting parts and her name wasn't known, Peter was the one cheering her on, but when she began to shine, appearing on red carpets, being mentioned at every award show, the once supportive gaze turned into a suffocating silence. He never said it. But every glance, every perfectly timed withdrawal carried the same message. I can't stand you shining while I remain in the shadows. He didn't forbid her from acting, he didn't stop her fame. He just stepped back, right when she needed support. He grew distant, right after she signed her first major deal. And on the night Michelle received her first big award, glowing, emotional, Peter stood below, clapping, but his eyes were fixed on the floor. No smile. No eye contact. Michelle once said, I didn't lose him to another woman. I lost him to a wounded ego that couldn't handle my success. That marriage didn't end with betrayal. It slowly died from something far crueler, the cowardice of a man who lacked the strength to love a powerful woman. And what hurt Michelle most wasn't the breakup. It was the harsh truth. If Peter stepped away in silence when Michelle began to shine, then the second man chose to stay beside her, but only to rewrite the entire script of her life. David E. Kelley, television genius and the mind behind numerous hit series, was the man everyone believed to be Michelle Pfeiffer's perfect ending. They fell in love when Michelle was already a star, and David was America's golden pen. To the world, they looked like a dream couple. But only Michelle knew, behind David's tenderness and intellect was a subtle, almost invisible form of control, a soft grip that tightened with each passing day. Michelle began disappearing from red carpets. She stepped away from film at her peak, turning down major roles. All of Hollywood asked, where did Michelle Pfeiffer go? The answer lay in those quiet years when David would gently whisper, I think you need a break. I think you should stay home. I think you've done enough. No commands. No force. Just countless versions of, I think, until Michelle started thinking that way too. Once, when she said she wanted to return for a complex role, David laughed. Why would you play a suffering woman when you could live a happy life? A sentence that sounded like love, but cut deep into Michelle's artistic soul. She stayed silent. And a year later, that role won an Oscar, for someone else. Michelle never blamed David. She still calls him a good husband, a devoted father. But on some nights, sitting alone, rewatching old footage, she knows, her artistic identity had been carefully wrapped up, neatly placed inside the home David built. Not everyone who makes you a star helps you rise. Some just prop you up to break you more easily. Brian De Palma cast Michelle Pfeiffer as Elvira in Scarface. He turned her into an icon. But in return, Michelle was controlled down to her very breath. She was forced to starve herself to maintain her figure. Screamed at on set, "You're not broken enough." Behind Elvira's icy stare was a woman trembling with fear, but no one saw it. No one except Brian, the man who directed both her performance and her pain. When the film succeeded, he declared, "I discovered Michelle Pfeiffer, as if she were an invention, not a person." Have you ever been near someone who claimed they were lifting you up, but really just wanted to own you like a trophy? If Brian De Palma distorted Michelle's identity to serve a role, then the fourth man shattered her heart, just as she finally believed she could love without armor. Not everyone who turns you into a star is someone who helps you soar. Some only hold you upright to break you more easily. Brian De Palma chose Michelle Pfeiffer for the role of Elvira in Scarface. He turned her into an icon. But in exchange, Michelle was controlled down to her very last breath. She was forced to starve to keep her figure. Yelled at on set, "You're not broken enough." Behind Elvira's cold gaze was a woman trembling with fear, but no one saw it. Only Brian did, the man who directed both her performance and her pain. When the film became a success, he declared, "I discovered Michelle Pfeiffer, as if she were an invention, not a human being." Have you ever stood beside someone who claimed they were lifting you up, but in truth, only wanted to own you like a prize? If Brian De Palma twisted Michelle's soul for the sake of a role, then the fourth man crushed her heart, just when she thought she could finally love without defenses. Not everyone who hurts you has to shout. Some only need to stay silent at the right moment, and just like that, you lose everything. Al Pacino, a Hollywood icon, Michelle's co-star in Scarface. The man everyone believed to be her artistic ally, the one who understood her, who once looked into her eyes during the most intense scenes and said, "You are Elvira, no one else could do this." But that was on screen. Off-screen was a different story. After Scarface, Michelle was torn apart by critics. The press called her a decorative vase, a cold face lacking depth. No one remembered that she had starved herself, exhausted her body, acted like she was losing her mind to bring an unforgettable Elvira to life. She only needed one thing. One sentence. One acknowledgement. Just for Al Pacino to say, "Michelle is one of the strongest actors I've ever worked with." But no. He stayed silent. In interviews about Scarface, Al mentioned the director, the script, himself, but never once mentioned Michelle. She once said bitterly in a rare interview, "When a powerful man chooses silence, it can be more dangerous than a slap." And for Michelle, Al never hit her. But he let others hit her. And stood still. Five men, 5 different ways to suffocate a woman. 5 cuts, none drew blood, but each one carved deeper than any insult. Michelle didn't scream, she didn't write a tell-all memoir. She simply stepped away from the spotlight. Then returned, in a way that made all of Hollywood go silent. She chose more complex roles. She made art films. She didn't need cleavage, red dresses, or a forced smile on the red carpet. Michelle didn't come back for revenge. She came back to reclaim herself. If you've ever believed in the final light within a woman, leave a comment. Michelle is not a victim, she is the proof.